Let's delve into the 15 most dangerous warlords, starting with the most extreme.
He's accused of kidnapping as many as 30,000 children in the past 26 years.
Some warlords wield immense power through violence and terror, creating chaos and instability in their regions.
Few Americans had heard of Joseph Kony, or the atrocities he is said to have committed in Central Africa.
Their actions and influence extend beyond borders, impacting global security. Few warlords were so brutal that just mentioning their names would instill fear in the masses. Joseph Kony. Joseph Kony has been a terror in Central Africa for over 30 years.
Few Americans had heard of Joseph Kony, or the atrocities he is said to have committed in Central Africa.
He leads the Lord's Resistance Army. His violent campaign has spread across several countries, causing destruction everywhere. Kony is known for his cruel tactics. He kidnaps children and forces them to become soldiers. These children are made to commit terrible acts. He also turns young girls into sex slaves. In this way, Kony builds a brutal army that has terrorized villages. His army has caused fear in Uganda, South Sudan, and the Central African Republic. Kony's ability to disappear makes him even more dangerous. He vanishes into the vast wilderness of Central Africa. This happens whenever authorities get close to catching him. For years, local governments and international forces have tried to capture him. However, Kony always manages to slip away just in time. It seems like he has a talent for staying one step ahead of everyone. This makes him almost impossible to find. Many efforts have been made to bring Kony to justice. A viral social media campaign in 2012 also tried to bring awareness to his crimes. Despite all these attempts, Kony is still free. His power may have faded in recent years, but he remains one of the most wanted warlords in the world. His ability to stay hidden has made him a haunting figure in the region. People remain worried, unsure of when or where he might strike again. Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi
brought the world's #1 terrorist leader to justice. Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi.
Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi didn't just want to lead a small radical group. He aimed to establish a caliphate. As the Islamic State of Iraq and Syria's head, he declared himself the leader of a global Islamic state. This gave him both religious and political power over Muslims worldwide. But instead of bringing peace, Baghdadi led one of the most violent organizations in recent history. He was responsible for mass killings.
Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi. Many of the residents were tortured during the terror group's occupation of northern Syria.
Slavery and widespread destruction. Under his command, ISIS became known for its terror across Iraq and Syria. Their attacks even spread to Europe and the United States. What set Baghdadi apart was his use of modern technology. He cleverly used social media to recruit followers from around the world. The Islamic State of Iraq and Syria, ISIS, wasn't just active in the Middle East. They had recruits from Europe, North America, and beyond. It's frightening how people were radicalized by ISIS just by using their phones and laptops. They could be drawn into violence from the comfort of their homes. Baghdadi was killed in a United States raid in 2019. However, his death didn't end ISIS immediately. The group continued to operate, showing that the terror he created still held power. Baghdadi left behind a dangerous legacy that remains today. Abu Sayyaf. Abu Sayyaf is a militant group based in the Philippines. It is one of the most violent groups in Southeast Asia. The group was formed in the early 1990s. At first, they claimed to fight for an independent Islamic state in the southern Philippines. However, their goals shifted over time. They became known more for their violent and criminal acts. These acts moved away from their original political or religious reasons. Their main activities include kidnappings for ransom, bombings, and beheadings. They often target civilians, foreign tourists, and government officials. One of their most known incidents happened in 2001. Abu Sayyaf kidnapped 20 tourists from a resort in Palawan. The hostages were held in the jungles for months. Some were released after ransom payments. Sadly, others were executed. In 2014, Abu Sayyaf pledged allegiance to ISIS. This marked a shift for the group. While they still carried out kidnappings, they began attacks under the ISIS banner. This increased the instability in the region. They mainly operate in the Sulu archipelago and Mindanao. These areas have dense jungles, making it hard for the military to track them. Despite many military efforts, Abu Sayyaf remains active. They continue to fund their operations through ransom payments. Even though key leaders have been captured or killed, the group is still a major threat. Their reputation for extreme violence has made them one of the most feared groups in Southeast Asia. Ayman al-Zawahiri. Ayman al-Zawahiri became the leader of al-Qaeda after Osama bin Laden was killed in 2011. Before that, he was bin Laden's second in command. Al-Zawahiri helped plan many of al-Qaeda's attacks. He was originally a doctor from Egypt. He brought both strategy and radical beliefs to the group. Even though al-Qaeda isn't as powerful as it was in the early 2000s, al-Zawahiri kept it active. The group still has branches in places like Yemen, Syria, and Africa. While ISIS got more attention for some time, al-Qaeda kept operating quietly. Under al-Zawahiri, it focused on building alliances and getting involved in local conflicts. This approach helped al-Qaeda stay relevant in areas like Southeast Asia and Africa's Sahel region. Al-Zawahiri is known for being smart and committed to his cause. He uses a long-term strategy, unlike ISIS's aggressive methods. Al-Qaeda, under his lead, avoided large attacks. Instead, it worked behind the scenes, becoming part of ongoing conflicts. There have been many reports claiming al-Zawahiri's death, but none have been confirmed.
Killed the leader of al-Qaeda, Ayman al-Zawahiri.
He still sends out video messages supporting attacks on Western nations. He also backs other al-Qaeda groups. His ability to stay hidden has kept al-Qaeda a threat. Even though it doesn't get as much attention as groups like ISIS, it continues to exist. Under al-Zawahiri, al-Qaeda has managed to adapt and survive in a changing world. Omar al-Shishani. Omar al-Shishani, whose real name was Tarkan Batarashvili, became one of ISIS's most well-known military leaders. He was easily recognized by his red beard and brutal tactics. Born in Georgia,
Omar al-Shishani, or Emir Omar al-Shishani. He was born in Pankizi Gorge, Georgia.
He served in the Georgian military during the Russia-Georgia War in 2008. There, he gained valuable combat skills. However, he was discharged from the military for health reasons. Afterward, he eventually made his way to Syria and joined ISIS. Because of his military background, al-Shishani quickly gained a reputation within ISIS. His combat skills and leadership helped him rise through the ranks. He wasn't just fighting on the front lines. He was also in charge of organizing many of ISIS's key operations. He led battles in both Syria and Iraq. Al-Shishani also played a major role in overseeing training camps for new fighters. His ability to lead large-scale attacks made him a critical part of ISIS's military strategy. Al-Shishani wasn't just any commander. He was trusted to handle significant operations, often leading major offensives. These offensives helped ISIS gain control of large areas. Under his leadership, ISIS expanded its territory and committed horrific acts of violence. These acts included mass executions. His growing power within the group made him a top target for United States-led coalition forces. In 2016, al-Shishani was reportedly killed in the United States airstrike near the town of al-Shirkat in Iraq. Despite reports of his death, there was confusion for months due to conflicting statements from ISIS and coalition forces. Eventually, his death was confirmed. This marked the loss of one of ISIS's most feared commanders. Even though he is gone, al-Shishani's influence remains. His approach to warfare and military tactics helped shape ISIS's strategy. His legacy continues to impact the group's operations today. Teodoro Obiang Nguema Mbasogo. Teodoro Obiang Nguema Mbasogo has been the president of Equatorial Guinea since he took control through a military coup in 1979. He's ruled the small West African country for decades, but his leadership is known for extreme corruption, oppression, and human rights violations. While he isn't a warlord in the traditional sense, his use of violence to keep control over the country lands him on this list. Under Obiang's rule, political opponents face brutal treatment. People who speak out against the government are often imprisoned, tortured, or even killed, with no concern for legal rights or justice. His government also controls the media, so it's nearly impossible for opposing views to reach the public. This has turned Equatorial Guinea into one of the most repressive states in Africa. One of the key reasons Obiang is so dangerous is the deep corruption that runs through his administration. Despite the country being rich in oil, most people live in poverty. Meanwhile, Obiang and his family have become extremely wealthy, while basic services like healthcare and education remain out of reach for the majority of the population. This extreme inequality creates unrest and makes the country less stable. International organizations have repeatedly called out Obiang's regime, criticizing the rigged elections that keep him in power and the military that supports his rule. Despite this, he continues to hold on to power. While there may not be open war in the country, the harm caused by his leadership is undeniable. The combination of authoritarian control, violence, and corruption makes Obiang a serious threat, not just to his people, but to the entire region's stability. Ratko Mladic. Ratko Mladic, often called the Butcher of Bosnia, earned this grim nickname because of his brutal actions during the Bosnian War in the 1990s. As the commander of the Bosnian Serb army, he was a key figure in the Srebrenica massacre of 1995.
Ratko Mladic led the Bosnian Serb army through the most bloody conflict in Europe since the Second World War,
where over 8,000 Bosniak Muslim men and boys were killed. This event is now recognized as genocide. The massacre was part of a larger campaign of ethnic cleansing, aimed at removing non-Serb populations from parts of Bosnia. Under Mladic's command, his forces carried out horrific crimes, including mass executions, sexual violence, and the forced displacement of thousands of civilians. The Srebrenica massacre became a turning point in the war, grabbing the attention of the international community and sparking outrage. As a result of his involvement in these crimes, Mladic was indicted by the International Criminal Tribunal for the former Yugoslavia. For years, he managed to avoid capture, going into hiding in Serbia. It wasn't until 2011 that Mladic was finally arrested. After his arrest, he was tried for war crimes, crimes against humanity, and genocide. In 2017, he was found guilty on multiple charges and sentenced to life in prison. The damage he caused left deep and lasting scars on Bosnia and the wider Balkans region. The memories of the war and the atrocities committed under Mladic's leadership still haunt the people of Bosnia. Ethnic tensions remain high in the region, and recovery from the horrors of the conflict has been slow and painful. Mladic's name has become forever linked with the brutality of ethnic warfare. While his conviction brought a sense of justice, it cannot undo the deep wounds left behind from the crimes he oversaw. Victor Bout. Victor Bout is widely known as one of the world's most notorious arms dealers, earning the nickname Merchant of Death.
His name is Victor Bout, and he's known as the Merchant of Death.
Born in the former Soviet Union, Bout used his connections and knowledge of the global arms trade to build a vast network that supplied weapons to some of the most violent and unstable regions on the planet. His operations spanned multiple continents, from Africa to the Middle East, where he provided arms to governments, rebel groups, and warlords alike. His ability to evade international law and profit from conflict zones made him a key player in fueling global violence.
Well, ESPN secured an exclusive interview with Russian Victor Bout, the so-called Merchant of Death.
Bout's activities significantly contributed to prolonged conflicts, civil wars, and humanitarian crises in places like Sierra Leone, Liberia, and Afghanistan. By supplying arms to both sides of a conflict, Bout helped to sustain violence, leading to countless deaths and widespread instability. His business model revolved around exploiting regions that were already struggling with war and unrest, making him an integral figure in perpetuating global conflict. Bout was finally arrested in a sting operation in Thailand in 2008.
Bout was arrested in 2008 by undercover agents from the U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration.
After years of dodging authorities, he was extradited to the United States and, in 2011, sentenced to 25 years in prison for conspiring to sell weapons to a Colombian terrorist group. Despite his capture, the damage caused by his arms dealings is still felt today, as the weapons he sold continue to circulate in conflict zones. Nizar Zakka. Nizar Zakka might not be as famous as some other names on this list, but his role in modern warfare is just as dangerous, especially in the field of cyber conflict. Zakka, a Lebanese national, is often described as a cyber warfare expert with deep connections to militant groups. His expertise in technology and hacking has made him a key player in the growing world of cyber warfare, where battles aren't fought with guns, but with computer systems and data. One reason Zakka is so dangerous is his involvement in providing sensitive information to terrorist organizations. He has been linked to groups like Hezbollah, known for its role in various terrorist activities across the Middle East. The information he has shared has reportedly helped these groups plan their operations more effectively, making him a significant figure in the world of cyber espionage and terrorism. Zakka's story gained international attention when he was arrested in 2015 by Iranian authorities. He was accused of spying for the United States and engaging in activities that threatened Iran's national security.
I love freedom, and this is freedom. It's unbelievable.
His arrest fueled speculation about his role in cyber warfare and raised questions about the true extent of his influence. After years in detention, Zaka was released in 2019.
Nizar Zaka was released from Iranian custody on Tuesday, a Lebanese national and U.S. resident.
Following negotiations between Lebanon and Iran. What makes Zaka's work particularly dangerous is how cyber warfare operates. Unlike traditional warfare, cyber attacks don't involve physical combat, but they can still cause widespread harm. Hackers like Zaka have the ability to disrupt essential infrastructure, steal critical data, and influence conflicts from behind a computer screen. In a world that increasingly depends on technology, figures like Nizar Zaka pose a growing threat to global security. His story highlights how warfare is evolving and why cyber warfare is becoming an even more serious concern in today's world. Ahmed Abdi Godane. Ahmed Abdi Godane was the leader of al-Shabaab, an extremist militant group based in Somalia, and his leadership made the group one of the most feared in East Africa. Godane took control of al-Shabaab in 2008, and under his guidance, the group expanded its operations beyond Somalia, targeting countries like Kenya and Uganda. He was the mastermind behind some of al-Shabaab's deadliest attacks, including the 2013 Westgate Mall attacks in Nairobi, Kenya, which resulted in the deaths of 67 people. This attack marked a turning point for the group, as it showed that they were capable of executing large-scale operations outside of Somalia. Godane's influence on al-Shabaab wasn't limited to military operations. He also enforced a strict interpretation of Sharia law in areas under the group's control, with brutal consequences for those who didn't comply. Public executions, stonings, and amputations became common under his rule, striking fear into local populations. His ability to maintain control over a fragmented and often divided group of militants was seen as one of his greatest strengths. In addition to his military and ideological leadership, Godane was known for his close ties to other terrorist organizations, including al-Qaeda. Al-Shabaab formally became an affiliate of al-Qaeda under his leadership, further boosting the group's international profile and access to resources. Godane's death in the United States.
Today announcing that the U.S. has killed the leader of al-Shabaab, an Islamic extremist group in Somalia.
Airstrike in 2014 was a major blow to al-Shabaab, but the group has continued to carry out attacks in the region, showing the lasting impact of his leadership. Isaias Afwerki. Isaias Afwerki has been the president of Eritrea since 1993.
Isaias Afwerki, the long-standing leader of Eritrea, is a figure of both reverence and controversy.
And his rule is one of the longest in Africa. His leadership is often seen as highly authoritarian, with many human rights groups raising alarms over the harsh policies his government enforces. Under Afwerki, Eritrea has become a one-party state, where political dissent is practically non-existent. There are no free elections, and the media is heavily controlled, meaning the people live in constant fear of being watched or punished by the government. One of the most criticized policies of Afwerki's regime is indefinite military conscription. Young Eritreans, both men and women, are forced into military service for an unspecified amount of time, often under very tough conditions. Many conscripts are stuck in the military for years, with little to no pay, living in poor conditions, and doing hard labor. This policy has led thousands of Eritreans to flee the country. Many risk their lives crossing the Sahara Desert and the Mediterranean Sea in hopes of finding safety and freedom in Europe. The military conscription system has been called modern-day slavery by international organizations due to the lack of choice and the conditions recruits endure. Afwerki's involvement in regional conflicts has further cemented his dangerous reputation. Eritrea has been involved in multiple armed conflicts, with the most notable being the border war with Ethiopia between 1998 and 2000. The war resulted in tens of thousands of deaths, and even after the fighting officially ended, tensions between Eritrea and Ethiopia continued for many years. Afwerki's government has also been accused of supporting rebel groups in nearby countries, such as Somalia, which has further destabilized the Horn of Africa. Despite international criticism and sanctions, Afwerki has managed to hold on to power. His tight control over Eritrea's military and security forces means there is little to no chance for internal opposition to rise. This has kept Eritrea one of the most isolated and repressive countries in the world, and Afwerki shows no signs of changing his approach or stepping down anytime soon. His leadership continues to affect the region, keeping Eritrea in a state of isolation and contributing to the instability across the Horn of Africa. Al-Baghdadi's successor. After the death of Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi in 2019, ISIS found itself without its notorious leader. However, The group didn't take long to name a new successor.
Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, along with several of his wives and children.
This individual, believed to be Abu Ibrahim al-Hashimi al-Qurashi, stepped into the leadership role and kept the group's operations going. Although al-Qurashi's name isn't as well known as Baghdadi's, his leadership has ensured that ISIS continues to operate and adapt to new challenges. Under al-Qurashi's command, ISIS shifted its approach. During its peak, the group focused on controlling large areas of territory in Iraq and Syria. However, after facing significant military losses, the new leader changed tactics. Instead of large-scale territorial control, ISIS now concentrates on smaller, more decentralized attacks. These attacks target both local forces in Iraq and Syria, as well as international sites, including lone wolf operations in Western countries. This shift has helped ISIS stay active, even without the large areas of land it once held.
However, a video released by ISIL on Monday purports to show heavy fighting in al-Baghdadi.
Though ISIS no longer rules over large territories, al-Qurashi has worked to keep the group's network strong. Fighters have spread out to different regions, including Africa, Southeast Asia, and Afghanistan, where they continue to carry out attacks. One of the reasons for the group's survival is its ability to recruit and radicalize people online. This has allowed ISIS to maintain a dangerous presence, even with the loss of key leaders. Al-Qurashi's role in keeping this network running has made him a key figure in modern terrorism. Additionally, al-Qurashi has reportedly strengthened ISIS's ties with other militant groups, such as Boko Haram in Nigeria and al-Shabaab in Somalia. By aligning with these groups, ISIS has expanded its influence far beyond the Middle East. These alliances make it even harder for global forces to fight against ISIS's activities. Despite continued efforts by international forces to weaken ISIS, al-Qurashi has managed to keep the group alive and dangerous. His ability to maintain a global terrorist network, orchestrate attacks, and recruit new members shows that the ISIS threat is far from over. This makes him one of the most dangerous warlords in the world today. Ali Khamenei. Ali Khamenei, Iran's supreme leader, holds one of the most powerful positions in the country.
Khamenei rules over the national police and can issue decrees and make final decisions,
controlling not only its politics but also its military and religious affairs. Khamenei has been the supreme leader since 1989, succeeding Ayatollah Khomeini, and his rule has had a major influence on both Iran's domestic policies and its interactions with the rest of the world. One of the key ways Khamenei wields power is through his support of various militant groups across the Middle East. Hezbollah, a Lebanese militant organization, is one of the most significant groups that Khamenei backs. Through financial aid, weapons, and training, Iran has helped Hezbollah maintain its stronghold in Lebanon and extend its influence across the region. This support has played a major role in regional conflicts, especially in Syria and Iraq. Iran's involvement in these conflicts is largely driven by Khamenei's desire to expand Iran's influence and counterbalance Western power in the region. Khamenei's influence isn't limited to just Hezbollah. He also has strong connections with other groups like the Houthi rebels in Yemen and various militias in Iraq and Syria. These groups often serve Iran's broader strategic goals, destabilizing governments and spreading Iranian influence. This strategy has made Iran a significant player in regional conflicts, fueling tensions between Iran and other countries, especially Saudi Arabia and Israel. Domestically, Khamenei has a tight grip on power through the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, a military force directly loyal to him. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps plays a major role in maintaining its authority by suppressing dissent, controlling Iran's economy, and overseeing its nuclear program. The supreme leader also has the final say on all key issues in the country, making his position more influential than even the elected president. Khamenei's leadership has contributed to Iran's isolation from the international community, especially because of its nuclear program and human rights violations. Despite international sanctions and internal unrest, Khamenei's rule continues to shape not only Iran, but also the broader Middle East. Asadullah Khalid. Asadullah Khalid is a key figure in the Taliban. The group has fought Afghan and international forces for decades. Khalid holds significant military power within the Taliban. He has planned and led major offensives. His brutal methods and strategies have made him one of the most feared warlords in Afghanistan. Khalid's rise within the Taliban is tied to his military campaigns. These campaigns have targeted Afghan civilians and international forces. One of his tactics is using bombings and roadside explosives. These attacks have caused thousands of deaths and widespread destruction. His operations are responsible for some of the deadliest attacks in Afghanistan's history. Khalid is also known for his harsh treatment of prisoners. He targets anyone he sees as a threat. Reports of torture and abuse have followed him for years. There are claims that he ordered brutal acts against captured enemies. This cruelty has made him one of the most feared Taliban members. Khalid's role in the Taliban extends to its political power. His influence goes beyond the battlefield. He is involved in negotiations with other countries and internal Taliban decisions. As the Taliban fights for control over Afghanistan, Khalid is shaping its actions and policies. Even as Afghanistan seeks peace, Khalid's presence fuels violence and conflict. Mullah Omar. Mullah Omar founded and led the Taliban.
Claimed Taliban leader Mullah Omar died 2 months ago.
A militant group that shaped Afghanistan's history. He was born in 1959 in Kandahar, a time of political instability in Afghanistan. In the 1980s, he fought against the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan. Later, in the 1990s, he became an important figure in the Afghan Civil War. His religious beliefs and military experience helped him build the Taliban into a strong force. In 1996, under Mullah Omar's leadership, the Taliban took control of Afghanistan. They enforced strict Islamic law, called Sharia law, which limited women's rights. This led to public executions and the destruction of cultural landmarks, like the Buddhas of Bamiyan. Women's education was banned, and strict dress codes were imposed. Mullah Omar was known for refusing to accept any form of moderation. One of his most dangerous decisions was protecting Osama bin Laden and al-Qaeda. This allowed al-Qaeda to plan the September 11, 2001 attacks on the United States. After the attacks, the United States demanded Omar to hand over bin Laden. He refused, leading to the United States invasion of Afghanistan in October 2001, which continues today. Mullah Omar was secretive and rarely seen in public. After the United States invasion, he avoided capture for many years. There were many rumors about his hiding location, with some thinking he was in southern Afghanistan or Pakistan. Despite the fall of the Taliban, Omar remained a symbolic leader. The group reorganized and continued fighting United States and North Atlantic Treaty Organization forces. In 2015, it was revealed that Mullah Omar had died at 2013. The Taliban kept his death a secret to keep their leadership intact. Even after his death, the group continued following his ideas and strategies. Mullah Omar's support of al-Qaeda left lasting damage on Afghanistan and the world. His leadership of the Taliban caused decades of conflict, making him one of history's most dangerous warlords. Thank you for watching and stay tuned.